Once you've ruled out the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be true.
And it is not a question of a little occultism or a touch of mysticism, Mr. Benton. It is vampires with a host of damned souls of telepaths.
I am thy father's spirit, doomed for a certain term to walk the night.
Here, the old gods aren't dead.
And what of the true god?
He's dead. You can't complain.
People assume that time is a strict progression of cause to effect, but actually, from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
You're listening to Paranormal UK Radio.
Hi everybody, this is Irene Allen, the host of the Paranormal UK Radio Show, the flagship show of the Paranormal UK Radio Network, and I'm not going to get this wrong tonight. I'm here with Mark Johnson.
Oh my God, I am impressed. You got it all in one take.
I did, didn't I? And one bloody breath.
will wonders never cease?
Oh, God almighty.
Well, considering the technical difficulties we were having before the show started, you're sounding pretty good, so.
Well, yeah. You may lose me, but I apologize if that happens in advance.
Well, hopefully not. You're not having any big storms over there again, are you?
No.
Well, thank goodness.
No storms at the moment. A little bit of rain here in Wales, but that's about it, really. But then again, it always blasted rains in Wales.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're there on the coast.
Yeah.
See, I'm just directly across the ocean on the other coast, facing you, and it's just cool but nice today.
Oh, was you the little toe rag that was waving at me across the water then?
Yeah, you see the finger sticking up?
Yes, I did.
Uh-huh.
I gave you 2.
Oh, gee, that's good. Double-barreled.
Double barrels, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and get right into the show tonight. Got a excellent guest for us tonight, and I'm really interested to talk to this gentleman about his background and what he works with. Our guest is Jerry Sargeant, who's known as the Facilitator, and he's the founder of Star Magic Healing. He's a powerful healer, motivational speaker, international best-selling author, and renowned for transforming thousands of people's mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual lives. His remarkable abilities enable him to access deep into people's energetic and holographic blueprint to facilitate healing. So, Jerry, we wanted to welcome you to the program.
Thanks for having me, Mark. Irene, it's a pleasure to be here.
Jerry, the Facilitator. That sounds like somebody I work with.
And who's that?
Never mind.
her shady past.
Yeah.
So Jerry, I was actually reading some of your book last night, Healing with Light Frequencies, the Transformative Power of Star Magic, and I was reading a little bit about your background, and I was wondering if you can just tell us, just to start off the show, a little bit about yourself, and how you came to become a healer and start on this path.
Yeah, of course. I'll give you the machine gun version, the short as possible.
I understand that.
I mean, I now I travel the world and train people to heal with this frequency we call star magic. So we've trained thousands of people in over 40 countries, and we're empowering so many souls on planet Earth. But my life before that was very, very different. And I used to be a criminal. I used to smuggle drugs for a living. I was involved in lots of high-level bank fraud, smuggling other commodities. And I had a big kind of massive life shift. I mean, as a kid, I was fostered, adopted, drink, drugs, all that sort of stuff. And life kind of spiraled out of control like loads of teenagers. And I ended up working for this high-profile criminal organization in Tenerife in the Canary Islands. And I was there from sort of, I think about 18, 19 years old through to 25, 26-ish. And in 2005, I had a few encounters that changed my life. One was a car crash. One was an introduction to my first spiritual teacher. I met a reptilian in human form. A number of just different things happened. I mean, the car crash, I suppose, was the main pivotal thing. I was with my ex-wife and children, and we were traveling to Bucharest Airport in Romania early in the morning. And I woke up. I was asleep in the passenger seat. I woke up. There was a massive crash and bang, and there's like glass and wind in the taxi, and it was swaying from side to side. And I remember thinking to myself, boy, we're in a bad accident. We're either going to hit the oncoming traffic or the car's going to flip over. And then all of a sudden we came to a stop, and it was just getting daylight. There was no cars on the road, and I thought, this is a bit weird. Like, where's all the cars? What did we hit? I looked at the taxi driver. He looked petrified. I looked in the back. Hilaire, our daughter, was underneath the driver's seat. There was no seatbelts in the cab, and Laura had Josh, our son, in her arms, and both their mouths were full of glass. And I looked in front of me, and there was a big hole in the windscreen, and there was blood dripping down my face, but I wasn't bleeding. So I got out of the car, and I looked about 30 meters back up the road, and there was two ladies on the side of the road, and one of them had her ankles cut clean off. And the other one was physically okay. About another 100, 150 meters up the road was what looked like a dead body. And I wasn't sure at the time. And what had actually happened is three ladies were crossing the road. The first one got hit clean on by the cab. She came through the windscreen, smacked me in the face, got sucked back and flipped over the car and died. The second one had her ankles cut off. And the third one was physically okay. I checked on the kids, checked on my ex-missus, and they were all okay. And I was walking up to the two ladies, and a guy had come out from a nearby factory, and he was on the phone. I thought, he must have called emergency services. What can I do? Like, her ankles are on the floor. The other lady's screaming and crying. I was just fixated on this lump in the road, and I got closer and closer to it. I walked up to it, got within about 10 meters, and I see this energy hovering over her body, and I'd never seen anything like it. I now know it was her soul, but I didn't know anything about this stuff at that time. And I'm shaking my head, like trying to get this thing out of my head, but it wasn't like I was seeing it with my mind's eye. I was seeing it with my physical eyes. Anyway, I was shaking my head, like just hoping it would go in a way, and just, is this real? I got closer and closer to the body, and the energy kind of fizzled off into the ether, into the distance, and disappeared. And by that time, I'm looking down right over the lady's body, and her legs are wrapped up over her head. She's completely mangled, and it was like someone had taken an old car to the scrap heap, and whatever was inside the body had no use for it anymore. It just, boom, it had gone on its merry way, no love lost. And I looked up to the skies, and I remember saying thank you, and I felt really grateful. And I remember thinking to myself, I really want a whiskey and a cigarette, and I don't drink whiskey and don't smoke cigarettes. Yeah, it felt like a time to celebrate, and I didn't feel sad or upset or anything. It was like I was just felt really blessed to have had this experience, and it was like the universe smacking me around the face and saying, "Come on, Jerry, wake up, man. We're so much more than these physical bodies. We're atoms and molecules. We're energy, So this experience happened, and this kind of woke me up. And then from that point onwards, loads of things happened. My ex-wife had a headache. I saw it in her head. It was green. I grabbed it and pulled it out. Lots of other experiences happened, like healing experiences. We ended up moving to New Zealand. A friend of mine had a car accident. Her partner phoned up and asked if I could help, and she was in hospital, like really smashed up. And the doctors had said, "You're probably never going to walk again. You'll be in hospital for at least a year." And I was thinking, well, how am I going to help you? I'm in New Zealand. You're in England. But my intuition said, get some crystals, put them on your energy centers, and lie on the bed. So I did that. And then I was suddenly inside a hospital room, and all this light started pouring out of my hands. So I started putting her body back together. And I did this every day for a couple of weeks. And she walked out of hospital with a Zimmer frame in 12 weeks. And the doctors were like flabbergasted. They couldn't believe it. And I was thinking to myself, did I actually do something here? Didn't I? Is this my crazy imagination? But when she came out of hospital, she phoned me up and she said, Jerry, I woke up one night, looked to the side of my bed and said, what are you doing here? And she saw me in a hospital room, and I was like, what? You saw me there? I was in a different country, you know? And like this kind of woke me up even more, made me realize that, you know, what is going on in our imagination is actually real somewhere in the quantum field. And then I met an old fella. He taught me how to meditate. We became really good friends. He had a pyramid in his garden. I had so many experiences in there. One day I'm meditating and my feet turned to balls of fire. Jesus turns up and stands in front of me and said, you know, you can walk anywhere you want to go in your life. Just don't be scared. And I said, okay. And then he turns and these stairs appear in the garden. He walks up, he walks through them, through a door, and he's in the Last Supper. I follow him up and go through the door, and I'm there, and I'm Matthew in the Last Supper. And again, I'm thinking, what is going on?
Jerry,
yeah.
This vision was in your meditation, yeah?
So I'm there meditating with my eyes open.
Yeah.
And he appears before me. Like he didn't appear in my mind's eye. He was there in the garden in his astral body.
I see. Okay.
So I've brought my light out of my body and I followed him up the stairs and in through the door, because when I had the car crash around that sort of time, I ended up meeting my first spiritual teacher. She worked for Scotland Yard in the psychic division, and she used to regress me into past lives 2 or 3 times a week. She taught me how to remote view, how to travel multidimensionally, how to bring my light out of my body, all these different things. So I was kind of equipped for this situation. And so I had that experience. I'm sat there around the table, everyone's eating like food and stuff, and I look out the window and there's a massive spacecraft, and they were showing me that extraterrestrials have been around for a long time. So had that experience, came out of the room, down the steps, and I walked back into my body. And then about 2 weeks later, I'm meditating again with my eyes open, because this guy Michael taught me to meditate with my eyes open. And this space pod landed in the garden next to me, and there was a blue being inside of it. So I've brought my light out of my body. I've gone and jumped inside, and we flew through a tunnel, like a portal, for about 4 or 5 seconds. And when we came out the other side, there was beach water and like some kind of like land. We were on Alpha Centauri, and I don't know how I knew that, but I just started downloading information. So I've got out of this space pod, walked up the beach, and there are about 200 of these blue beings, and I knew they're from Lyra, and I'd never heard of Lyra, I'd never heard of Alpha Centauri. And these beings came up to me and hugged me, and when they hugged me, the love that I felt was just, I can't even describe it. It just felt like I was home. And I didn't want to leave, you know. And I started like knowing like how long the women were pregnant, what sort of foods they ate. This information was just coming to me. So I was like, I hugged them back, and we were in this kind of like embrace for a little while. And then they kind of cleared a pathway for me. And one of them led me up the beach and through these trees, like this jungle area. And within the jungle, there was a building that was made of light. And we went into the building, and there was this really old, ancient blue Lyran being. And it was like meeting an elder. And this being asked me to kneel down on the floor. So I did that. And then all of this orange light started downloading into my crown. And it was full of all of this geometry, but not like the geometry that you get in the textbooks here. It was this bendy, swirly geometry that kept morphing and changing. So I had this experience, and then 2 of them like picked me up underneath my armpits and frog marched me back to the space pod, stuck me inside. We flew back through the tunnel. I got out, went back into my body, and then nothing happened for a couple of years. And then one day I woke up and I knew we had to go back to England. So after badgering my missus and kids for a few weeks, they didn't want to go. They ended up agreeing, and then we flew back to England from New Zealand. And that's when things kind of went into overdrive. I was out running one morning. I saw some fairies flying around a tree. And I stopped, and I'm looking at the fairies. And then an angel comes down and says, "My name's Archangel Gabriel. You need to write a book." And I said, "Okay." I said, "What's it called?" He said, "Into the Light." He said, "It's about your life story." So I said, "Okay." So I ran home, I opened up my laptop, and I wrote this book in 4 weeks and then published it. And then once I published it, I started seeing all this geometry everywhere, the same geometry that I had in the orange download of light. And I was saying to my guides, what am I supposed to do with it? They said, you've got to meditate more. You're just not meditating enough, Jerry. You're not connecting. You're not going deep enough. So I started getting up at 5 o'clock every morning and meditating with my son, Josh. And we ended up going into these mystery schools underneath the pyramids in Egypt. And we were sat in these classrooms and at these little kind of old wooden desks like you get when you're 5 or 6 years old at school. And I was looking left and right, and there were loads of other human beings in there. And there was a guy at the front of the room with these scrolls. And the scrolls had the codes on that I was seeing in the empty space, and the same codes that got downloaded on Alpha Centauri. We went every day for 2 hours, sat in these classrooms, and they showed us how to heal people using these codes. So people then started coming into my life that needed healing. So I was like, well, let me just see if this stuff works. And it was working. And I thought, you know what, maybe I can actually start a business and make some money out of this legally for the first time in my life. So I decided to go to a Mind, Body, Spirit festival. And I made up some little flyers. I took my book into the light with me. And I said to people, you know, I'm going to give away 3 free healings at the end of the weekend. And if you put your name down, I'll draw them out of the hat. And about 70 or 80 people put their names down. And I phoned every single one of them and told them that they'd won just so I could practice. So I had like 78 or 80 odd people to practice on, and people loved it. So I started asking people for testimonials, and I was getting video testimonials. I thought, you know what, I'm going to start a website, call it Star Magic Healing. And there's reasons why I called it Star Magic Healing. And then once I started the business, the Blue Lyrans came to see me again, told me that I needed to write a book called Healing with Light Frequencies, the Transformative Power of Star Magic. And they also showed me the Christ consciousness grid of the planet. And around it were all these lights. And I asked them what they were, and they said, they're healing centers. You've got to build them. I said, well, if I build them, who's going to work in them? They said, you need to train people. So I said, okay. Again, I ran home. I designed this training program based off the back of the book. And people just turned up the next February. That was in 2017 from all over the world. And since then, we've trained thousands of people in over 40 countries. And we're in the process of building our first healing center in Transylvania in Romania. It'll be ready at the end of next year. We've got land in the UK. We've got land in Madeira. We're buying different parcels to build these things. It's all just happening. And all I'm really doing is just following the guidance of these blue beings that picked me up in a craft one day. So yeah, that's kind of like, you know, the shortest version possible of explaining kind of how I got from where I was to this point.
Wow.
Yeah, you certainly moved through that one, Jerry.
Yeah, there's a lot of information to go there. Well, Jerry, let's back up a bit to your earlier life. Now, I understand you were living a much different life as a criminal and involved in a lot of negative things. But did you have any experiences, even as a child growing up, that would seem unusual, whether paranormal or spiritual? Or how would you describe your early life in that way? Anything else strange?
It's a really good question, Mark. So, like, there's different ways of looking at it. Like when I was a kid, I would have. I mean, even up until about, say, 5 or 6 years ago, I would have turned around to you and said I had no experiences as a child. My parents didn't. They took me to church once. They weren't religious. I didn't believe in God, the universe, spirit, none of that stuff. But I used to wake up in the nighttime screaming regularly, and I'd be climbing the walls like something was trying to get me, and I was scared, like screaming. And then I'd be running around the house, and my adoptive parents would be like, "Come on, Jerry, it's okay. You know, come back to bed. It's just a bad dream," all that sort of stuff. About 3 or 4 years ago, I was working in Turkey, and I'm working on this lady in this healing center. And as I'm working on her, this Baphomet, like a goat being, comes in behind me, and all of this fire starts coming down through my back and my arms. And it got to about my elbows, and I stopped it. So I got this being out of my space, got rid of it, did what I needed to do, and carried on working. That night when I went to the gym, I set up a circuit, and this big guy came over and started moving my weights around and got really angry with me. The next night I saw him, he was lovely. So I knew that night before something had tapped into his consciousness to try and like irritate me. Now, that night that he tried to irritate me, I went into the sauna after I'd trained, and I'm sat there in the sauna, in my shorts. No one else is in there. And I look out like through the little wooden door in the glass hole. And there's these three beings looking at me. One had the head of a Tyrannosaurus Rex. One had like a lizard head, and one was a little bit different. Kind of sort of like reptilian-ish, but a bit different. And they're staring at me, and I'm thinking, what is going on? And they're looking at me. Then they just disappeared. I got out the sauna, and I was kind of sort of, you know, when you've been in the hot and the heat, you're a little bit kind of drowsy and woozy, and I'm sort of drifting a little bit, just sat there. And I started getting flashbacks of my childhood and different things that happened. And I realized that when I was having my bad dreams and stuff, they weren't dreams. I was being taken on a craft with these extraterrestrials. And I also knew that I had to speak to my real mum. And I actually found her when I was 25 years old, and we had a crazy relationship. And she's really psychic and spiritual. And anyway, I knew I had to get hold of her. So anyway, I phoned her when I came out of the gym. I said, listen, I don't know what you can tell me, but I need to know everything you can possibly tell me about my birth. So anyway, she told me that when she got pregnant with me, she didn't tell her parents. She went from Birmingham in the UK down to Cheltenham, where I was born, and went into a home for women that were pregnant out of wedlock, because it was frowned upon back then. And she stayed in there till it was time to give birth to me. When it was time to give birth to me, they took her into this room, and they left her there for 13 hours, exactly 13 hours, which is an important number. And she was crying. No one came to see her. And literally a few minutes before I was going to come out at 3:50 in the afternoon, which is an 8 numerology, again, a really important number in my kind of experiences, 2 men in black masks came into the room, and a nurse in a mask. They didn't say anything to her. They just parted her legs. They got a massive pair of scissors, and they started cutting her vagina. And they just cut her and ripped me out, put me in another room, didn't let her touch me or anything. And then they walked out of the room. They left me crying in one room and her screaming in another room. And they left her there and me there for hours. And then they came back in a few hours later, and they stitched her back up with no medication, then took her back, and she had no contact with me. And she started telling me about, the father. She never knew who he was, but he had blonde hair and blue eyes. And she knew that I had the different strands of DNA from different kind of human lineages. And I started to realize that, I actually came to Earth really to share star magic, but certain forces kind of had me earmarked and wanted to kind of traumatize my mother, to traumatize me, to fragment my consciousness and take me on a really dark and destructive path as early as possible. When I was 2 months old, my first foster parent raped me. So all of this information started coming back, and so I realized...
2 months old?
At 2 months old, yeah.
Oh.
So I started to realize that, this started really early on, but I just forgotten so much. And I started then to sort of get recall of my memory and stuff.
So that happens to a lot of people who are involved in this or who are this connected. They've had experiences most of their life, but they tune them out. I know Irene, I used to always complain saying nothing ever happened to me. And but then when I start to examine my life, I found many, many different times in my life when I would have spiritual or paranormal types of experiences. Everything from hearing my name being called to out-of-body experiences to lots of different things. So it's usually, and especially those people we've talked to in the past who are what we would call experiencers of, I hate using the term aliens, but, as Whitley Strieber calls them, the visitors or whatever, however you want to refer to them, these other entities, off-world entities, interacting with us.
I call them them.
You've called them other names, too. She gets bothered by them occasionally. She tells them to F off.
Literally.
Yeah. So it's usually people have had experiences most of their life, and then there's just that turning point, like your car crash. I mentioned Whitley Strieber before. When he had his experiences in his cabin in '85, he thought that was the first time until his memories all started flooding back, going all the way back to childhood. So yeah, it's people are born born into this world differently and are set up for having these experiences, and then till they're ready to be switched on fully.
Absolutely.
Now, what else? There was something here specifically I wanted to. So one of the things that I'm really interested in now, as I was reading some of your book, it said you studied at some Egyptian mystery schools.
Yeah, that's what that was. That was through meditation. That's when I was getting up and with my son, and we were going into these classrooms. We were going down these corridors, ended up in these classrooms, and that's where they showed us how to heal using the codes.
Mm-hmm. Now, why do you specifically refer to it as star magic?
Well, when we were in the mystery schools, they showed us these symbols which meant healing magic, and that's where the magic part of it came from. And since then, like, there's so many other reasons why if I didn't know them at that time, I would have called it magic anyway, you know. But the star part came because, the Lyrans took me to space, and I as I've kind of been on this journey, I've realized that we all came from the stars. We're angelic humans here, and we have so much potential inside our DNA, but it's just been manipulated, and we're much lesser of a race than we used to be. We used to have our kind of 12-strand blueprint in full operation, and things like telekinesis and teleportation and traveling in our Merkaba and healing at distance were all just second nature. And what we're actually doing right now on planet Earth is reigniting and reawakening that divine potential that we've always carried from source, from the stars, through multiple lineages and experiences as souls and lights on different planets as well as Earth. And the codes that we're bringing through star magic are healing us and enabling us to kind of wake up that dormant potential so we can become fully fledged star beings again.
So what was your reaction when you started doing these meditations and then you started having interactions with angels, with Jesus, or these other beings? I mean, how did you feel afterwards? Were you shocked and surprised, or were you more accepting at that point in your life?
Well, the thing is with me, I'm like a dog with a bone. Yeah, if I find out something and I get like some confirmation, then I'm like, right, I need to know everything about this. And one of the things that kind of started really early on, around the same time as the car crash, was my ex-Mrs. Laura. She had this experience. I was sat there watching TV one night, and she came downstairs and she said, Jerry, I keep seeing all these dark images and hearing all these dark voices. And I said, okay, what do you want to do about it? In my mind, I'm thinking, this is a little bit weird, but what do you want to do about it? You're my wife, I love you, what do you want to do? So she phoned her friend that was a priest, and this lady comes around the house and she's putting crosses up, she's dousing the house and all this stuff, and I'm thinking, man, this is like something out of the Poltergeist, this is weird. But anyway, she does all her stuff, she calms Laura down, Laura goes to bed. The next day, I go to see my friend and I said, listen, what do you make of this thing that happened last night? So I told him what happened, and he said, you've got to speak to this lady. So this was when I met my first spiritual teacher. He gave me the name and telephone number of this lady. I phoned her up. She didn't answer, but she called me back a little while later. And she said to me, what's been going on? And I said, well, this happened last night, blah, blah, blah. She said, where do you live? And I said, 316 Richmond Road. And I didn't give her any other part of the address. She said, hold on a minute. And the phone went quiet. So I'm waiting, and I'm expecting, something. And she said, have you been knocking some walls down in your house? And I said, well, we rent the property, but the previous owners have definitely built an extension. She said, yeah, you got an angry old man in the house. I said, what? She said, yeah, you got an angry old man. I said, okay, well, let's say there is an angry old man. What are we going to do about it? She said, oh, I'll get rid of him for you. I said, brilliant. When can you come round? She said, oh, I don't need to do that. I can do it from here. I thought, this is just getting stranger and stranger. So we finished up the conversation. I go home and I speak to my missus and I said, listen, I know I didn't tell you I was going to do this, but I spoke to this lady about what happened last night. And she reckons there's an angry old man in the house. And Laura turned around to me and said, yeah, I know, I've seen him, Jerry. So I was like, right, you've seen him, this lady that you've never spoken to, you've got no common friends, you could never possibly have communicated. There must be an element of truth to this. So then I phoned her back up and said, listen, I need to come and see you. I don't know what you do, but I've got to find out everything about what is going on. So I went up to see her, and she regressed me into a past life, and had this amazing experience. And I was hooked on it. I started going back 2 or 3 times a week for years, and she's taught me so much stuff. And I just was having confirmation after confirmation after confirmation. So I was really brought into it. You know, when I saw the lady's soul hovering above her body, all of these different things, and you know, when I pulled the headache out of my wife's head, and she got up off the bed, and you know, I've had so many of these kind of experiences that just are confirmations that something is beyond this physical world. And then the meditation stuff came a little bit later. I started meeting the angels and fairies and extraterrestrial beings, and I didn't ever think to myself, this is strange, this is weird. I was just like, I need to find out more. What else is there to know? I just wanted to know everything. The hardest part for me was telling all my mates were criminals, and they were thinking, Jerry's a nutter, he's gone crazy, you know, we should put him in a straitjacket, like, you know, put him in an asylum. I'm talking about angels and fairies, and to these guys it's so foreign, and even to me it was kind of foreign, but I knew that it was true. So there was never a doubt in my mind with anything. It was coming out into the public light and going on this journey like fully fledged, and I resisted it for so long, but the universe just kept beating me up until I kind of surrendered. And then I'm glad that I did in the end. It was the best decision I ever made.
It's definitely a fantastic journey when you go through these types of things and have these experiences. Now, I specifically, if you can indulge me for a second, I want to tell you a little bit about something that I've gone through, and this is why, as I mentioned before, when you were booked to do this show, something had happened just a few days before for me. Now, I've always been on a spiritual path the last 30-something years of my life, almost 40 years now, good Lord. And I started learning a lot of shamanic practices and other types of spiritual teachings and healings, but I took a year-long course in shamanic healing and as a shamanic practitioner. Now, since that time, I haven't really used it much because I've been caught up in everyday life, and I'm trying to get back into what I feel like I'm supposed to be doing, because my day-to-day life right now is not what I'm supposed to be doing. And so I tried meditating, which I've always struggled with. Nothing ever seems to happen, or I get brain clutter, and not much happens with that. But just a few weeks ago, I sat down, I closed my eyes, and I tried asking questions out loud. And one of the things I asked was, what was I supposed to be working on? What am I supposed to be doing? And all of a sudden, the words star medicine popped into my head. That took me by surprise. I had never heard of that term before. And being that I worked on the shamanic side of things, medicine, of course, in Native American culture, it's the same thing. It's energy. It could be likened to magic. And then I got the email about you coming on as a possible guest, and I read your background and I read the book, and I'm going, this really struck a chord with me. And that's why I started reading some of the book last night, and the words that I was reading and what you were saying were really hitting me. I mean, some terminology is different, but for the most part, I felt like what you were saying was spot on. So again, this is something that really resonates with me, especially with the the type of energy healing that you're doing, like when you reached into your wife's head, pulled out, I've worked with something like that before, or sending the healing remotely, and that's something that's really important. I think a lot of people need to understand when they think that they're dealing with somebody who's a psychic or a healer. They feel like that they have to be there in the room with that person in order to have the stronger connection, and that's not true, because distance doesn't matter, or time and space doesn't matter, because most of it is an illusion anyway. Everything is happening all at once. Time is happening all at once. Distance doesn't matter. Irene, who has worked with some people before, has worked with people in different countries remotely. I think the farthest away from the UK, she was helping somebody in New Zealand, which was the opposite, I think, of what you just did. So you definitely don't need to be with the person in order to facilitate that healing once you are connected and letting that energy work through you.
Yeah, I think that's really important, Mark, because it opens everything up. People limit themselves by thinking they have to be in the room, we train people, so we have a full academy. We take people through 4 levels of training, and the idea is they're going to come and work in our healing centers at some point and basically do what I do. But, during the process, we really emphasize that it's about healing at distance, because, if someone wants to start a business doing this stuff, they've got a global marketplace, and they can work from the comfort of their own home. They can decide their own working hours, and everything is available. And like you say, in the quantum field, time, distance, and measurement, they don't exist. And for those of people that don't really know too much about healing, we use something called quantum entanglement, which means, if I'm going to work on Mark, I could bring up a hologram of Mark. Now, a hologram of Mark could be anything. It could be just an empty white light body that I'm just visualizing in the space, or I could use a teddy bear, or I could use a cup or a glass. I could get any object that I wanted to and entangle that with Mark just by saying, this is the hologram of Mark Johnson. And, by setting that intention, whatever I'm using as the hologram becomes Mark, and whatever I do to the hologram actually happens to Mark in real time, because consciousness travels at the speed of light squared, which is 34.7 billion miles per second. So everything's happening so quickly. So it opens you up to the whole world. And the thing is as well, which is really important, everybody can do this. People think, well, I haven't got any gifts and I'm not psychic, and, I can't really see with my third eye. I know from training thousands of people from all walks of life that everyone can do it. And if me, just, some drug smuggling, criminal, if I can work out how to do this stuff, anyone can do it. So, don't be sitting there thinking, you guys have got gifts and blah, blah, blah. No, this potential is inside every human being on the planet. You've just got to decide that you want to access this potential, and you will be able to. And you said something really important earlier about asking questions. And this is something we really emphasize in our training. Like, if you ask good questions, you get good answers. A lot of people, they might get a glimpse of some information, in the quantum field. It could be some color or a shape, or they might feel something or get some subtle energies moving around in their space, and they just kind of dismiss it. But what is really important, whatever it is that you kind of experience, you ask a question about it. So let's say you saw, a blue cube. You'd say, okay, well, how can I use this blue cube to help me facilitate the healing of Mark Johnson or whoever I'm working on? And then the universe will give you another piece of the equation. And it's like a puzzle. It's like a game. You start to put it together. So by asking good questions, you get good answers, and you're like a police inspector trying to solve a crime. You go into the healing space, you open your heart, you bring up the hologram, and you ask good questions, and you just get pieces of the puzzle, and you just play. And that's what star magic is. It's really like a game. It's not a system. There's no systematic approach whatsoever. It's literally like a game, and you just have fun every single time you go into a healing session.
So how long now have you been working with the star magic healing?
Well, we started the business in 2016. I had my first healing experience with my wife, which was back in 2006, 2007, something like that. And then lots of different experiences, during that kind of experience with my ex-wife all the way through to 2016. So I've been playing around with it, but it's only really, I'll tell you when I've kind of, got the most information is actually when we've done the trainings for other people. When you're delivering the information, that's when the stuff really comes through. And, we've delivered a lot of trainings, and every single training is different. Like each time more knowledge comes, more wisdom comes, more information. And, the frequency's getting stronger and stronger. And the data and the information that we're bringing through is just, it's just mind blowing. And I think what's also important is like, I'm not a teacher, I'm not a guru, and we always stress this because there's actually nothing I can teach you or anyone else, but what I can do is help you remember what is already inside of you, because this isn't new knowledge, this is ancient knowledge that we're just remembering, and it's in our DNA, and all we're doing is bringing through light and sound codes, vibrational frequencies, to help awaken that dormant knowledge and wisdom. And that's why you said to me, when I read your book, it felt familiar. It felt like it resonated with me. That's because it isn't anything new. You know this stuff, Mark. Like everyone that comes to our training, they know this stuff. The reason they're pulled into it is because they feel the familiarity. They've used this stuff before, and, by coming to the training, they're just getting access to something that they've known for billions of years.
Now, when you're doing your work, now you have had connection and dealing with different types of entities and beings. Is there any particular types of race or entities that you deal the most with?
Well, it depends on what front, because there's beings that you get along with very, very well. And there's other beings that you don't get along with very, very well. And quite often, you have quite a lot of encounters with the ones you don't really get along with very well as well, because they're always trying to interfere and, put a spanner in the works to stop, certain pieces of knowledge being shared with our community. When we're working with, positive beings, work with the Lyrans that have always been with me since day one. We work with a lot of Lyrans, a lot of feline seraphim beings, which again come out of the Lyran system. Anuhazi. We work with some Palladians. We work with a lot of insect beings. Beings that we call blue devis, the blue devi angelics. They're like these kind of electrical butterflies. They're absolutely phenomenal, and we only got introduced to them about 18 months ago, and they've been working with us in our healing. They've taken the healing to a completely new level. On the negative side of things, we have encounters with a number of different beings, like, Anunnaki beings, and there's so many offshoots and hybrid species from all of these kind of strains. But we work with some really positive reptilians and some negative reptilians that we kind of have battles with, draconian beings, sometimes mantis beings, different beings, sometimes greys, different types of greys, tall whites, different kinds of negative beings. But this is the game, and I think what's really important is, regardless of what's happening, you just stay in love, high humor, and any of these negative entities, they can't touch you, and they can't get anywhere close when you're staying in that high joy vibration, that high bliss vibration. But the Lyrans, the feline beings, the blue devis, they're the ones that really help us in our healings. We've also got some ETs that have got crafts with healing chambers. So we'll take our clients onto these crafts for psychic surgery. There's also some psychic surgeons that we work with underneath the pyramids in Giza, which we perform some incredible operations with. I remember when all of this stuff started happening, this was back in 2015, before we actually launched Star Magic. I was putting some videos up on YouTube, and a guy got in contact with me who had like tumors in his belly. He had diverticulitis, peritonitis, E. coli. Like the doctors had said to him, you know, you'll be lucky to make it through the next 24 hours. And if you do, we're going to have to cut away 10 feet of your intestines and put a colostomy bag in. Anyway, he got in contact with me through YouTube, and it was on Boxing Day. And anyway, like a day later, 2 days later, we did a healing. He made it through the 24 hours. The doctors pumped him full of drugs, you know, helped him live. And he came out of hospital, and they said, you know, listen, February, you're coming in for an operation. So anyway, we did 2 healing sessions, and the first one, like this is his words, and you can go to the website and you can actually you can watch the video, and in the video he shows you the scar across his stomach that was left after a distance healing session. It's pretty cool. So he went into the healing session, and he said these 2 big shafts of light came down by the side of his bed. Now, he was in one part of England, and I was in another part of England. We were nowhere near each other. And then he said a unicorn came and kissed him on his nose. And then the next thing, he's in this building, like made of some kind of concrete, and there's all of these surgeons around him, and I was there. And his words are, he felt my hands go into his stomach where the major pain was. But actually it wasn't. I was just watching the surgeons do the work. And they had these crystal light rods, and they were cutting his stomach open and taking the tumors out, and then doing some other stuff with his body to remove the E. coli and the stuff in his blood. Anyway, this experience happened. And when he woke up, he looked down, and there was a scar several inches going straight across his belly, and he took a photo, and you can see it on the video. He went back to the doctors a few days later, and they said they did some tests, and they said, you know, the tumors have gone. Where have the tumors gone? You know, there's no E. coli, there's no peritonitis, you know, all of this stuff. There's no diverticulitis. You're clear. You don't need a colostomy bag anymore. You know, you look amazing. You look like 20, 30 years younger, you know. And he just said, I had a psychic operation, and he just smiled and walked out. And these kind of experiences have been happening. And when you kind of open yourself up to this work, like there are many, many beings in the field that will come and help you. But there are many, many beings that will come and do things that won't help you. So you have to use discernment in every single situation. You can't just trust everything. You know, you've got to take precautionary measures. And this is the kind of stuff that we show people, you know. But there are some incredible beings that will help you in so many different ways. And they have technologies that we don't have here on the planet.
Well, what types of beings do you think are working against us, and why do you think that they're trying to keep humanity dumbed down and not able to connect on the spiritual level?
Well, this is a really big question, man. So, human beings are the guardians of Earth, and we are the guardians of the Stargates. There are 12 primary stargates, 12 secondary stargates, and some other stargates here on this planet. And stargates enable interdimensional and multidimensional travel. And humans carry the crystal keys that enable us to access the stargates. And if humans weren't here, the stargates would close permanently, and no other beings would be able to come into planet Earth or away from planet Earth. Okay, and the Stargate system that we've got here on planet Earth is one of the best. You can get anywhere from Earth. Now, if you go back 750 billion years to the Lyran Wars, there were certain like fallen Elohim beings that wanted to control through power and manipulation. And there was something in space, there was this agreement called the Emerald Covenant. And the Emerald Covenant was basically the law of one, where we have to live with love and compassion and treat each other like brothers and sisters and love each other and be kind to each other. But these negative fallen beings wanted power and control. So what they did is they blew up Stargate number 11, which is in the Lyran system. Later on, they blew up Stargate number 12. And what happened is our matrix it used to be connected to the Andromedan galaxy, and it fell away from the Andromedan galaxy. And it became like this matrix that wasn't connected to the whole anymore. I mean, it was on one part, like energy could flow down from the primary light and sound fields of source energy to hold the matrix in place. But the beings that were here in the matrix could not leave. So what happened is there was finite energy, and these beings did not want humans, the angelic humans, because they were so powerful. The angelic humans, that's what we used to be. They wanted to dumb us down. They knew that they had to keep us here to keep the Stargate system alive, but they had to keep us dumb and stupid, otherwise we'd remember our power. So over many, 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 many years, we're talking billions of years, they've genetically raped and pillaged and spliced and cloned and smashed our DNA. And we have that kind of double helix, 2-strand, 3-strand. Some people are bringing on online strand 4 and 5, but we have this original 12-strand DNA template. And the reason that we're all here on planet Earth right now is to awaken those dormant genetic DNA codes and activate our full crystalline blueprint, so we can connect to the crystal core and allow these kind of 12-dimensional currents to run through our system to enable our full potential to come back online. So the negative beings, they're scared. And the reason they're scared is because they have got finite energy, and they use human beings to collect energy. If you look at all of the sites around the planet, churches and cinemas, they're all built on ley line structures. So whenever there's fear and negative energy, they draw it down into the ley lines, they collect it in crystals around the planet, and they use this energy to feed their own system. They're basically feeding off of energy, off of frequency, off of code. And so they're raping us and pillaging us and all of this stuff. And they need to keep us dumb so we don't remember. Because if we remember the truth and our own divine potential, then we're going to stop that happening in a heartbeat. And this is the stuff that we're sharing with people. You can't come into these beings can't come into my space now and do anything to me. Doesn't matter who they are, because I'm fully aware and fully equipped to deal with any situation. And all the people that we train, we get to this state of consciousness too. And many, many people around the planet, other groups are doing the same thing, and consciousness is expanding. And the human population is expanding consciousness and remembering the truth that we are these divine angelic humans that carry so much potential. And they don't want us to remember that, because once we remember this stuff, it's like opening Pandora's box. We regain all of our abilities, all of our skills, and the game's over. And they don't want the game to be over. They want to keep masquerading, hiding behind the scenes, and keeping us locked in this illusion, locked into the mainstream media, locked into everything external, thinking that it's going to make us happy. Cars, watches, clothes, all of this stuff to feed our ego. But really, by taking a deep dive into our heart, that's where the magic lies. That's where the love is. That's where the potential is. So it's a game of energy. And we're in a spiritual war, and it's a game of energy.
Why Earth? What is so important about this planet that the Stargates would be constructed or placed here? We seem to be in an insignificant solar system and an insignificant part of the galaxy. And so why all the focus on this particular planet?
Well, I wouldn't say we're in an insignificant place, because if you actually, if you look at what we're taught at school, you've got a few planets, that we know, like Pluto and Venus and all these things, but there are billions of planets and many, many species. And actually Earth itself was originally kind of earmarked for a living library, the crystal content, the gold content. One of the things that the Anunnaki did was they messed up their kind of atmosphere. And because they're cut off from the rest of the system, right? They have this finite energy. So one of the things they do is they take gold, and through some kind of laboratorial chemical process, they create this white gold powder, and they eat that, and that keeps their frequency in a certain state. And so what they did is they came to Earth to mine the gold. They also created a slave race. Some humans were created as a slave race to mine the gold for them, and they use that gold to repair their atmosphere, so they can keep their energy better, so they can prolong the life, prolong the inevitable. Eventually, it's not going to go on forever. They are going to turn back to stardust. They're not going to be able to. They're not eternal beings. Like, we have the potential within our own DNA to become eternal beings again. We're not actually supposed to die. We're supposed to be immortal and eternal and just live forever, and to be able to take these bodies through the Stargates, through different dimensional matrices, and go and experience different places throughout the multiverse. So Earth itself is like a living library, and with the crystal content, you can store a lot of information. At the same time, the planetary architecture and the Stargate structure that was initially put here, it is a lot more advanced than a lot of other Stargate structures, because if you go to some planets and you access a Stargate, you might want to go from one planet to another planet, but to get there you've got to go via a third planet, okay? Because that's just the way that it's set up. It's like in England. I live in Cheltenham, right? And I might want to go to Aberdeen in Scotland, but on the way I've got to go to Birmingham and then to Leicester to fuel my car. Okay, it's a little bit the same. Like on some planets, you might have to go from one planet to another to get to the third. Now, the planetary Stargate system on Earth, you can get pretty much anywhere in like one jump. So it's a really important system. And, if you look at all the wars that are fought around the planet, like they're not fought over religion, they're not fought over oil, they're not fought over gold and money, all of this thing. Religion it's all BS. The reason that the wars are fought is over control of the planetary architecture, the Stargate. Like Stargate number 10, for example, is in Iraq. You've got Stargates in Iran. You've got Stargates in a lot of war-torn places, and this is the battle for the Stargates, control of them.
I had always heard rumors that was the real reason the U.S. went into Iraq back then, was because of they wanted to have control of a Stargate that was supposedly in Iraq. But these Stargates that are around the planet, are people in these locations generally aware of them, or are they hidden in some areas, or just they're sitting in plain sight and we just don't know, we don't look at them twice because we have no idea what they are. They look like natural formations.
Well, a bit of everything, really. Like the primary Stargates, most of them have got military bases around them and they're underground. You've got some Stargates that are out in the ocean, underneath the sea. You've got smaller Stargates that are there, but people just kind of walk through them, and unless your body is switched on and tuned in to the right vibration, and your DNA is activated, you're never going to be compatible with the Stargate itself, so you're never actually going to be able to kind of travel anywhere. So you might walk through the same space as a Stargate and not even recognize it. As you kind of activate your DNA and raise your vibration and become more aware, you'll start to sense these things as you're moving around the planet. You go to some of these kind of high energy zones and you can feel the vortexes and the portals that are around. The other thing is, if your DNA and your body isn't switched on correctly, your mathematics aren't realigned, your inner geometry, you might try and go through a Stargate and you might just explode into stardust. That's the other thing that can happen. The other thing is, not all the Stargates are open. They're not open all the time. They open and close, and they've been closed for a long time on planet Earth, but we're coming into a time cycle now where the Stargates are starting to open again, and that's why everything's really heating up on the planet. Like this war that's happening on planet Earth right now. You should take, Russia and Ukraine. This is just a war that's been continuing from space. The wars that started 750 billion years ago are still being played out, not just on planet Earth, but on other planets too. We're not the only planet where they're trying to control. There's many others too. But we're here on Earth, and we're here for these kind of not end times, but new birthing times to help humanity remember and to take control of our own beloved planet again. Mother Earth is our home, and we're here to work with her to help her ascend, and for us to ascend too as humans, and for us to get out of this kind of matrix, because the only way out of this prison matrix is to go through the Stargate structure. There's a certain way that you've got to go through, and there's certain places around the planet that you can access this, but you have to get your frequency right and your DNA right to be able to do that.
Really fascinating stuff. Now, when you do speaking and motivational speaking, like you use have a platform that you use to that you talk to people on?
I mean, we're putting videos up on YouTube and Instagram and that sort of thing all the time. All of our social media sites, which you can access through starmagichealing.com. And we're always doing interviews and always out there. And if you go to the website, we're doing stuff all the time. I mean, every single week there's weekly meditations, and we've got a membership group. We've got online trainings, in-person trainings. We've got 2-day workshops. We do plant medicine retreats, and there's so many, places that we can engage with people. They've just got to come and have a look at what's going on and see if they like what they see.
Okay. Now,
Mark, I'm sorry, I'm getting a bit sound going in and out.
Oh, that's okay.
Well, that's why I'm keeping quiet at the moment.
Well, do you have any other questions that you'd like to ask, Irene?
No, I'm trying to listen.
Okay. All right. Not a problem. So with humanity, and you say that we're the guardians of the earth, which, well, quite frankly, we're doing a really crap job of it lately. But we have the key to these Stargates. Literal keys. I mean, in what way do we have the keys to these Stargates? Is it our potential?
We are the keys. We are the keys. Our own architecture, our own geometry. They're embedded within us, like they're holographic keys that are held within our own divine templates. We are mathematical equations, and as we activate our own kind of like blueprints, these crystal keys are just there, and we're like the keys themselves. So when we're activated, we can just walk through these Stargates.
Okay. What about with people who are able to, and you have done this too, is it necessary to use these Stargates to travel if one can astral travel to other dimensions, other realms, other worlds in a non-physical form? Or are the Stargates built and meant to physically travel somewhere else?
Absolutely, the Stargates for physical travel. Like, I mean, we can astral travel to other places around the planet. We can astral travel to places on other planets, through meditation, through different techniques that we utilize to bring our light from our body and move our consciousness from one time-space coordinate to another time-space coordinate. Remote viewing is something else, slightly different, but you can access information in other spaces with your thoughts, with your intention, with your energy. But for us to physically move out of this matrix, we're going to have to go through this Stargate structure.
Well, what about with the traveling that you have done out of body in the visions where you go to the Lyran system, you interact with these beings, you're hugging these beings? That's all done on a non-physical level?
Yeah, I mean, when I had the experience with the Lyrans, I brought my lights, like my consciousness, my frequency out of my physical body, and walked into the craft, got inside, and then my consciousness, like when I was in that state, there was no physical body. Like I was literally, all of me was inside that craft, but my physical body must have just been sat there in the chair, like, I don't know what it was doing, but I had no recollection of it. Like all of my consciousness was there inside this craft, and then we flew through this tunnel, which must have been some kind of like portal system, because this is how I really discovered how to kind of like move your consciousness from one place to another. Because what happened when I got in the craft, it was like the craft had somehow connected with my own consciousness, and my consciousness connected with the craft, and I was shown the other side of the tunnel before we even moved in the craft. And then so my consciousness kind of, like, part of it went to the other side of the tunnel. I saw the beach, I saw the water, I saw where we were going to. Then we flew through the tunnel, and it's like the rest of me caught up with the first part of me that had gone through. So somehow the craft had positioned my consciousness in a future location, which wasn't really future, but it was another kind of coordinate somewhere in the universe that I was going to go to. So this is when I realized that you have to kind of project yourself into the space to then be able to bring the rest of you there. And this is still something that, you know, I don't fully understand, but this is something that, you know, I want to, and I'm sure over the course of, you know, however long the period's going to be, we're going to get this kind of full remembering of how to really do this stuff.
So what has been your biggest challenges to date in trying to bring this message and trying to help people reach and learn more about this type of healing?
I mean, so many things have happened to try and stop me. I mean, you know, I think a year after we started, I got arrested for healing people with cancer. You know, I went for a 2-year court battle, which was, I mean, it was interesting. Again, this taught me a lot because what happened is I worked on this lady in India who had fibroids and tumors. We did 3 healing sessions. Her tumors had gone, the fibroids had gone, and she got the doctor's medical notes from before and after the 3 healing sessions, and it showed that there was nothing there. And she made a little video, and I put the video up on YouTube, and the title of the video was Alternative Cancer Treatment. And then I got arrested for under the Cancer Act of 1939, because apparently you can't use the word treatment and cancer or cancer and heal in the same sentence. So I went through this kind of court case, and I got a private investigator to have a look at it for me, and they found out that actually the people that were taking me to court were the cancer charities that funded the investigation. And then all sorts of things started appearing online. There were pictures of me with light coming out of my hands, calling me Harry Potter and all this sort of stuff. And loads of doctors had put loads of crazy comments saying I'm this and I'm that. And to be honest with you, I thought it was a great thing because it got Star Magic so much business. Because when you searched my name, all of this crazy stuff come up, and there were a lot of people that wanted to see what it was all about. So we ended up going through this kind of court case. I was in New York actually, speaking at the Conscious Life Expo with my children, and because when I split out with my missus, they travelled everywhere with me, so they'd been with Star Magic from the start. And we were doing this talk in New York. I flew back to London, landed at 6 a.m. with the children, and we had to be at court at 9. So we went straight to court in London. The children had to wait outside because they were under 16 then. And anyway, the judge turned around to me and said, you know, there's nothing I'd love more, Mr. Sargeant, than to lock you up and throw away the key. But I can't. My hands are tied because you've got 2 children that depend on you. So they ended up giving me a £6,000 fine and just, you know, and saying on your way. So I've had lots of kind of challenges where, you know, different things have stepped up to try and, you know, put Star Magic down, but I just see them all as great opportunities. Like, I never see anything as a challenge. I never see anything as bad. I just see everything as an opportunity to grow. And I try and, you know, see where I can learn, where I can grow, what information I can grab from each situation and utilize it to grow Star Magic. So everything that, you know, has been some kind of challenge, I've just utilized it to our advantage. And this court case and this cancer kind of case was just something that we utilized big time.
Now, you also run a foundation. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, this is really important, actually, because this is one of the things that really changed me. Because back in 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, just, you know, I was we were doing a lot of like bank fraud, and we were stealing millions of pounds from banks in England and Europe. And, you know, all the time I was getting big bags of cash, hundreds of thousands of pounds, like, you know, regularly. And for some reason, I decided that I wanted to give some to charity. So I spoke to a friend and said, listen, how could I anonymously give this money to a charity? So they put me in contact with this charity in Africa. So anyway, I sent this cash off through my friend. We got it into the banking system and sent it over. And then we got letters back saying, you know, we've built these schools and these water pipelines and this sort of stuff. And it made me feel really, really good. And I felt like Robin Hood, like stealing from the rich bankers and giving to the poor. And this started to change me on a deep level. And from that point forwards, I've always wanted to give back. So when we ended up going to New Zealand, we started we set up a health and fitness centre and a mixed martial arts gym before we came back to England, and we were doing like charity events for abused women and different things. And through the gym, we were helping a lot of people too. And then when we moved back from New Zealand, I ended up taking my daughter to the Philippines after the typhoon Haiyan had hit, and we rebuilt villages and put permaculture projects in place. We did some motivational talks for the government because, you know, their heads were fried with what was happening. So we did that, and then since then we've done loads of other things. I mean, at the moment we give regularly to a charity in Africa. We went to Cambodia a few years ago. We went into the jungle. We did some stuff with the schools there. We worked with some charities that worked with abused children that have been put for prostitution and child trafficking and all that sort of stuff. So now we've got this foundation, and like all the time we just give back. Like, it's really important to give back. So every year, well, the last 2 years we haven't because of this crazy world situation, but up until that point we were going and, you know, just taking money and a team and going to different places around the world and doing work. You know, some kind of charity work. And for me, it's a really big part of what we do. We have to give back. We have to help those that are less fortunate, whether they're here on our home turf or whether they're somewhere else in the world. Like, whatever arises, we just sort of go with it, you know. We haven't really got a plan, but just, you know, we've got contacts and we know people that need help. And we just decide, okay, this year we're going to go and do this. And that's what we do.
So what's next for you? Where do you want to take your foundation or teaching and healings? I mean, where do you want to see yourself in the next 5 years?
Well, at the moment, we're working with architects designing our first healing centre. We're going to break ground next March. So by the end of next year, start of the year after, we should have finished our first healing centre in Transylvania. And then I want to build the one in the UK, then Madeira, and just keep rolling them out around these specific grid points around the planet. And just create this incredible infrastructure where we can harness these off-planet frequencies and bring them to Earth through these geometrically aligned buildings on a great big scale and expand consciousness really, really fast. The other thing that we're doing this year is we're launching an online hospital. So all of the facilitators and healers that we've trained, we're going to provide an online hospital for them to work out of. So they're literally going to be like doctors online, helping people with different issues. There'll be doctors, there'll be consultants, people will be coming in for checkups, just like a normal hospital. And this is going to be massive. So we're launching that this year. The foundation, you know, we just want to grow it. You know, as we make more money, we'll put more money into it, and the foundation will grow as Star Magic grows. Yeah, I mean, we're always looking for investors to help us with the build out of these healing centers. You know, we've got some we're speaking to at the moment that are helping us fund the first few. And yeah, if anyone's out there that's interested in doing something really good for the planet, then get involved. But the aim is just to help as many humans as possible. You know, I just want people to be free and to step into their power and to realize that they have all of this divine potential inside of themselves and to stop playing small, because most people come to this planet and they play a very small life. They just exist and they work for somebody else. They get a mortgage, they pay off their mortgage, and then they've got a few quid left over to live out their last remaining days. That's not living, that's not thriving, that's existing. And with the abundant resources here on this planet, nobody should be living and existing. Everybody should be thriving beyond measure and living at a level way beyond extraordinary. And through Star Magic and all the work that we're doing, I just want to empower people to wake up their inner sovereignty, to wake up that lion and that lioness inside of them, that god, that goddess, and, you know, to shine that incredible light that is inside every single cell of their human body, and just to be powerful, to take responsibility for themselves and to go out into this world and realize that They don't need any government. They don't need anyone to tell them what to do. There's no biblical figures. There's no hierarchical figures that can help them. They are the power. They are their own saviors. And I want everybody to realize this. This is the truth. This is the magic. And this is where we want to be. Just expanding consciousness and helping people become the most powerful versions of themselves.
With some of the work that you're doing, especially working remotely, would you classify some of what you, when you're working in that capacity, similar to remote viewing?
Well, yes and no, because there are times when you're working on a client and you're facilitating their healing and you're tapping into past life experiences where their soul is having traumatic experiences in the quantum field that you need to access to enable you to do the work to create the healing for the human being that you're working on. So in those kind of scenarios, you kind of are remote viewing a past life experience. But again, like remote viewing itself, for me, is really about accessing data that is available now in this present day reality to help a present day life experience. But the two could kind of cross over at the same time. Absolutely.
And I have to apologize. Irene wanted me to mention she's still having mic problems, so she's not able to join us back in the conversation. So it hasn't been as much of a three-way conversation as I would have hoped tonight. But we really appreciate you coming on. Now, how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, I mean, it's been great to be here with you, Mark, and big love to you as well, Irene, if you can hear us. And it's a shame you couldn't be on, but I'm sure our paths will cross again. But yeah, I mean, people can come to starmagichealing.com. If you go to starmagichealing.com, you can get access to, there's loads of free stuff. I mean, there's free meditations, there's weekly meditation groups, there's all sorts of stuff that people can access. You can get 7 days free access to all of our Ascension tools. There's loads of videos, there's all sorts you can tap into. And then if you like the experience, then you can maybe come on one of our trainings or a workshop or try out our monthly membership. You can get access to all of our social media sites through the website. You can speak to the team. If you want to come on the training, you can download the prospectus, read it. You can book a free call with one of the team that will explain to you all about the different levels of the training and how it can help you with your life. I mean, you've just got to get over to the website, starmagichealing.com, and then everything's there laid out for you.
Okay, fantastic. And then, of course, there is your books. The one we mostly talked about tonight is Healing with Light Frequencies, The Transformative Power of Star Magic. And now, where can people find that and your other books?
You can buy that on Amazon. You can get it at Waterstones, Barnes & Noble, Simon & Schuster. You can get it on our website. I mean, there's loads of places you can buy it. If you just Google it, it'll come up and you just choose where you want to get it from. You can also get Into the Light, Maximum Wealth, some of my other books. And then this October, my new book, How to Be Superhuman, Live and Thrive in 5D, that's coming out, which is like a 500-page workbook with loads of tools to help you just live at a level beyond extraordinary and be superhuman and access this potential in your DNA. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Well, Jerry, we've come to the end of the show. I just want to thank you so much on behalf of Irene and myself for coming on and talking all about it. This was very enlightening, especially for me. It really resonates with me. And I hope it resonates with other people out there as well. So thank you for coming on.
It was a pleasure, Mark, and, just thank you for having me and wishing you all the love, luck, and happiness, moving forwards.
Oh, and Irene just sent out a connection with you on Facebook, too, so she wanted me to tell you that. Okay, so, well, thanks again, and I want to thank everybody else for tuning in to another edition of the Paranormal UK radio show, the flagship show here on the Paranormal UK radio network. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. You all have a great week, and Irene and I say goodbye, and we will catch you all next time. Have a good evening.